Alright, we got a good bit of news regarding future Transformers movies. Now, these are more along the lines of rumors than anything official, or at least as far as I can tell, nothing has been officially confirmed, but I still wanted to talk about this stuff, especially the big news, which is Michael Bay is apparently back directing, and that is so exciting. And you know, while I am very excited and optimistic, I'm also a little cautious about it, I guess, because I truly believe that Michael Bay brought his A game in the first 3 films, and while he was maybe a bit tired, I still think it was there as well in Age of Extinction, but you could definitely tell that he was fatigued by the time of The Last Knight. But it has been 8 years at the time of the making of this video since The Last Knight, so I feel like that's a good bit of a pause in between directing, so I think he'll be a lot more into this one. Also, I just wanted to add too, Michael Bay is not really back just because he's still been a part of the franchise as a producer. Sure, he's back directing, but he never left. And you can definitely say what you want to about Michael Bay as a director, as a filmmaker, but he makes great spectacle. A lot of his peers respect what he does, especially from a technical standpoint. I like Michael Bay. I really believe he knows what he's doing. He knows what kind of movies he makes, and he doesn't act like he does anything more than that. Now, aside from one thing that I'll bring up a bit later, there isn't really anything that says what this might be. Of course, a lot of speculation is it going to be a continuation of The Last Knight, a sequel to The Last Knight? And if you want me to be 100% completely honest, I don't think so. The Last Knight definitely has a reputation, and it was the lowest grossing Bay film. And I will say, I wouldn't necessarily mind sort of a wrap up of the main Bay movies, as much as I'm not a fan of a lot of the stuff that The Last Knight did. There was a bit of a cliffhanger with the ending credit scene of Unicron and Quintessa and whatnot, so there is something there they could do. My thing is, if I'm being completely honest, guys, and of course remember, I'm a huge Bay fan, but like, I think we kind of need to let the idea of the Last Knight sequel go. Yes, there is a tease for Unicron, but otherwise the movie kind of wrapped everything up. The Autobots got their home back, which was a big thing in the first 4 movies, as well as the Cybertronians and the humans having to coexist, basically, which was also a big thing in those first 4 films. So I think in a lot of ways, The Last Knight was kind of a wrap up on everything, for better or worse. Not to mention, as much as I do like the idea of Unicron being Earth, being inside the Earth, there's only so much you can really do with that idea, and I feel like that was already handled well in Transformers Prime. Not saying a live action version of that couldn't be cool, but it's just like, I feel like we all know how the movie's gonna end, you know? Given all of that, I just don't think a Last Knight sequel is going to happen. But I will say, despite everything I was saying, especially about letting it go, I wouldn't mind seeing it. It's just that I kind of feel like going that route is a little bit of a dead end. Now, one possibility that I like the sound of is kind of going the ignoring certain installments route. Kind of think like what the recent Halloween trilogy did, where it ignored every Halloween film but the first film. Now, I don't think it should be quite to that extent, but my thing is, I wouldn't mind if it just ignored The Last Knight and did a proper continuation of Age of Extinction. Actually follow up on the ideas of the creators, the Knights, Galvatron, all this stuff, instead of just doing the most basic form of that and ignoring a lot of the setup. There was so much that was interesting from Age of Extinction. I feel like the stuff with the creators was a genuine mystery that Quintessa was not a proper continuation of. I don't think it'll really happen either, for better or worse. As much as I love Age of Extinction and think that it's very underrated, it also doesn't have necessarily the best reputation either, so I'm not sure following up directly on that would be the best way to go. But I don't think it's bad, because I do feel like you would have a better chance of salvaging the Bay universe as a whole with a proper Age of Extinction follow-up than doing a Last Knight sequel. And then of course the first 3 films, you know, 07, Revenge of the Fallen, and Dark of the Moon, are still held in pretty high regard for the most part. There's the idea of ignoring the last 2 and just following on from Dark of the Moon. Granted, I do feel like you're also kind of handicapped there, because Dark of the Moon did end with a lot of the main Decepticons being dead. You could possibly work from there, but I'm not really sure if it's the best route. I just feel like there's too much that's already kind of gone at that point. Yeah, at least with following on from Age of Extinction, you had what they set up after Dark of the Moon. And then the most extreme version I've heard of this is ignoring all of them but 07 and continuing from there, which could be interesting. I'm not sure if I want most of the universe to just be overwritten, but it's certainly a possibility, although I feel like that might be going a little too far. Of course, there's ideas of, could this just be a random one-off film or its own reboot, or could it be in the same universe as the reboot universe we have right now of Bumblebee and Rise of the Beasts? Could it be a spin-off in the Bayverse set in between films or something? Or heck, maybe it's one of those, what was it, like 14 ideas they had before The Last Knight was coming out with the writer's room and whatnot? Who knows? Now, there was a post on, I believe this is 4chan, I don't keep up with that, and of course take this with a grain of salt, but one of the things that mentions here is a live-action Bay reboot movie, so that sounds interesting. And granted, it could be anything like, reboot. It could be maybe a softer reboot. It'd be kind of crazy for Michael Bay to basically just start a new universe based on his old one, although that would be pretty cool. And as for other bits of rumored news, there is apparently an animated Skybound adaptation in the works, which I think that could be very interesting, especially with how positively received Skybound has been. There's apparently a live-action Josh Cooley movie in the works, which I think is cool. I know a lot of people want a Transformers 1 sequel, but I think having him do something live-action could be pretty neat. This says Rise of the Beast, The Last Night, and 1 are not getting sequels, which makes sense because Rise of the Beast, I definitely don't think it's the worst movie in the world, but again, I call it Rise of the Mid. Didn't do super well box office-wise. It basically broke even, but for studios, that's not really a good thing. And of course, everything with The Last Night and Transformers 1. But that also means that the Transformers and G.I. Joe crossover movie is canceled, which can't say that I'm unhappy about that. As I'm sure some of you might remember, I was not a fan of this idea to begin with, and I'm still not, despite some people having issues with what I said about that and making really bad response videos. So that last bit definitely isn't surprising, but there's definitely some cool stuff here. I am very excited for the idea of Michael Bay coming back. I really want to see where this goes. And one thing that makes me excited too, that means Bay can get the focus again in Studio Series, which is kind of nice after that June 24th stream. But yeah, that's the rumored news from now. So tell me, what do you think about the rumors here? Do you like the idea of Michael Bay coming back? What kind of movie do you think he might be doing? And what do you think about the idea of an animated Skybound adaptation and Josh Cooley doing a live action movie? Let me know in the comments. If you guys have the time, please check out my store on Bonfire where I have a few shirts for sale. Some pretty cool stuff there, including the Bay Prime Did Nothing Wrong shirt. And I gotta thank my patrons on Patreon. In my average bird tier, there is Schmoptimus Prime and Demonic Whisper. And in my Bird of Prey tier, there is Austin Gillis. I can't stress enough how much I appreciate the channel support, you guys. Thank you. And as always, I want to give a big thanks to everyone for watching, and have a good one.